Joining me from our Westminster studio is the author and journalist Rachel Shabi and Barak from the Royal United Services Institute. A very good evening to both of you. Barak, first of all, David Cameron had said that last night's vote doesn't mean that Britain has turned its back on the world's trouble spots. Do you think it has?
I think that Britain's willingness to actually extend its influence abroad reflects its capacity, and with a slash in military expenditure, you're seeing a greater emphasis on pacifism and diplomacy merely because Britain doesn't have the capacity anymore. Already 10, 15 years ago, American troops were complaining that Britain didn't have the ability to achieve strategic lift into their US forces. So it's a matter of time till Britain gets left behind.
Rachel Shabi, what's your view? I mean, Parliament has taken the unusual step of stopping the Prime Minister on an issue of war, a highly unusual step. It's a step which some say could strain relations with the United States. How significant a change do you think this is in our foreign policy?
Well, first of all, I think you can be a significant and effective force in the world without that being predicated on your military strength and military capacity. You can do lots of other things that make you a force for good in the world. But secondly, I think it's a great thing that the UK, after decades of subservience to US foreign policy, is actually making a break with that, and especially after the past decade of catastrophic interventions in the Middle East that were US-led and UK followed, devastating consequences on the people who actually live in the Middle East. So it seems to me a very good thing to see Parliament taking a principled stand on this Syria question, and we can see it also with recent developments in the UK's relationship to Egypt, where following a military coup there where 1,000 protesters, upwards of 1,000, were killed by the military, the UK has stopped arms licensing to the military in Egypt. So there again, you can see what's emerging is a policy that is based on considered principles, but more importantly, is consistent across the Middle East. And that is something that's going to have much more credibility for the UK in that region.
Barak, do you agree that it's a sign of strength that Britain shows independence from America?
I think that at the fundamental root of any foreign policy is going to be the promotion of free trade agreements, democracy, liberty, development. Tony Blair spoke about extending democracy across the international community. Gordon Brown then extended that to development. It's of course branding, because there's a correlation between high degrees of democracy and high degrees of governance, good governance and development. Where there's a lack of transparency and corruption, you're going to get high degree of violence. You're going to get also an abuse of domestic infrastructure by ruthless autocrats. So in terms of promoting democracy, free trade agreement and liberalism, that's going to be synonymous with both America and the United Kingdom. So I really don't think that there's a subservience on the part of Britain to American foreign policy. Also bear in mind with Kosovo and even with Iraq, it was Tony Blair that took the lead. It's a myth that Britain was America's poodle. That really wasn't the case. And I think it's because Western liberal democracies just have the same ethos. And the whole notion of isolationism is really far-fetched, because we live in a globalized world. There is no such thing anymore as us and them. Everything global is also local. If you would have asked anybody in September the 10th, 2001, what do you think the prospects are for a sub-state actor receiving inspiration from a Taliban leader in a cave in Afghanistan to fly planes into the World Trade Center in Manhattan, they would have thought that you're bonkers. So on August the 30th, if I say to you, what are the prospects of the Assad regime that so flippantly uses chemical weapons to outsource that to a sub-state actor such as Hezbollah to carry out an attack on British soil, then again we're seeing a threat emanating from an area where there's a vacuum of governance, and a massive democratic deficit.
OK, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're running out of time. I want to give Rachel Shabi another say. What do you think this does to David Cameron himself? Some say that it's undermined his leadership. And how will Britain now look, do you think, round the table in the UN Security Council after suffering this defeat in Parliament?
Well, I think that the UK will look a lot stronger and a lot more consistent and a lot more principled. And just going back to that point about chemical weapons, I mean, one of the things that came up in Parliament, which David Cameron had a hard time explaining, was why there was a red line over chemical weapons use in Syria when no such red line existed in the 80s when Saddam Hussein used gas against Iranians and then against his own people, why there was no red line when the US used depleted uranium and white phosphorus in Iraq, and why there was no red line when the Israelis used white phosphorus in Gaza. So what's coming out is that the UK is being consistent in its policy in the Middle East, and that has got to be a good thing.
OK, I'm so sorry to speed you up, but we're running out of time. Rachel Shabi and Barak, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much.